Dre'Mont Jones did not hold back on the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow after ending their season. And some of what he said appeared in jest. In other parts of it, definitely not.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. Appreciate everybody for being here on this Victory Monday. It feels so good for it to be Victory Monday. Thanks for making Locked On Ravens a part of your day. Thanks to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners, for somewhere in the middle. Thank you as well. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage over here on Locked On Ravens. And on today's show, jam-packed episode, we're gonna relive the Ravens Week 15 victory against the Bengals because it feels oh so good to end the Bengals season, to have the Ravens continue their own season without having to be even more on their back foot, and also to do it in the way that they did it with that shutout win. So we'll talk about Dre'Mont Jones not holding back on the Bengals and Joe Burrow, because we know Dre'Mont was one of the most intense players on that football field on Sunday. Some of what he said appeared to be in jest, but other parts of that definitely didn't. We'll also talk about former Ravens clowning the Bengals for multiple different reasons and talking about how the end of that game went and how Baltimore differentiates from Cincinnati. And we'll also just dive into a Ravens and Bengals recap. Want to remind everyone, tell everyone today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Man, after 2 tough AFC North losses, to have a week like the Ravens did in Week 15, and hey, it might not even be over yet. The Dolphins and Steelers play tonight, so maybe there'll be one more early Christmas gift, early holiday gift for this team and a Steelers loss. But hey, Chiefs, they're eliminated. Bengals, they're eliminated. Ravens, they win. And the way that the Ravens won, which we'll get a little bit more into in the second part of the show, I thought was spectacular. But the main gist of it is that Baltimore won playing physical, intense football that got Cincinnati rattled, not from complete start to complete finish, but once they got it rolling about midway through that second quarter, the Ravens didn't look back. And Dre'Mont Jones was one of the players that was in the middle of a lot of the intensity. Obviously, he hit Joe Burrow on a play, and the Bengals took exception to it, and he was doing the cry. he was doing the cry like, oh, you're going to cry about it or whatever it was. And the Ravens got under the Bengals' skin. And Dre'Mont Jones, he didn't hold back on the Bengals in the postgame. And honestly, I had said we do the watch-alongs every single game here on Locked On Ravens during the games. And I said, if the Ravens win this game, I need to hear what Dre'Mont Jones has to say. I need to hear what he has to say. So Dre'Mont Jones, and this was a message that was put out there by the entire team, it felt like, is that they were really mad about what happened on Thanksgiving night. And they felt like they should, Dre'Mont Jones said that they felt like they should have done what they did on Sunday. They had the hunger, but then he was asked about the scuffle between him and a few of the Bengals players, where he did the crying emoji, essentially is what he did. He did the emote, and he said, quote, you know how it goes. Their feelings get hurt, or they get to chirping because something happened because I touched their quarterback. So they get all chippy and stuff like that, but I'm not worried about that. They're going to talk. Everybody's going to talk, but it's about, can you finish the game and play the right way with your teammates? That's what it's really about. And I think, look, the Ravens did that. The Bengals did not. And I think that, Dre'Mont's message there is correct, because I think Baltimore did play the right way. I think that they played a team game. I think that they were uplifting each other. And that's some of the stuff we're going to dive into a little bit more in the second part of the show again. But Bengals were upset. They were mad. And I think they let their emotions get the better of them, because there was a stretch towards the end of the half where they were fighting. Like, the Ravens and Bengals were fighting on almost every single play. And that spilled over both offensively and defensively for both teams. But he also was asked about when he sensed that the Bengals didn't feel lively. And he said, yes, I felt that during play 1, that they weren't ready to play. It was too cold for them. That's a cold answer. I'll tell you what, from Trey, that's a cold answer. But it's true. The Bengals just didn't have, and the Bengals were the ones, like the Ravens, if they lost on Sunday, yeah, their season would have been all but over, but they wouldn't have been mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. The Bengals, I'm sure that team understood that, yeah, with a loss, you're donezo. That's it. And it felt like Cincy didn't want it enough. It felt like they didn't want it enough. It felt like Baltimore came into Cincinnati and took it. And they took it and said, yeah, we're not, they snatched it away and said, we're not giving it back. And it felt really good because it's all year. It's been a tough year for this Ravens team. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that, yeah, they're not playing good football, but they just look dejected for a lot of this season at points. And it doesn't feel like Ravens football. It hasn't felt like that for a lot of the year. This was the first week in a while. And I know they ripped off 5 straight. I get that. But coming into this game, they were 0-6 against Pro Bowl quarterbacks. Terrible stats. The defense, they stepped up to the plate in a shutout against this Bengals offense that, hey, no T. Higgins, I don't care about that. You know why? Because the Bengals proved on Thanksgiving night in Baltimore that they could score without T. Higgins. T. Higgins missed both these Baltimore games, and the Ravens played with better intensity in this one. And, you know, these guys that play professional football and honestly sports in general, professional sports in general, like, you can tell when a team doesn't have it. You can tell when, you know, it's like a shark circling, right? And you can tell like, oh, this is good for us. You know, this is what we want. And then you boom, you dive in, you pounce, and you're like, all right, we have what we want here. We're going to take this. And not that it's easy, but you sense weakness. And that's what Dre'Mont Jones essentially said. And he asked if it was important that you play with an edge. And he said, yes, I think to play defense, you need to have a little bit of an edge. Sometimes you need to talk, you get a little extra push, but nothing to the point where it's going to cause a penalty, obviously. And I don't know if anybody else thought this way, but when Draymond was right next to the refs when he was doing the crying thing. And I thought the refs were going to hit him with a taunting because he was like animated with it. Like he was into it. And it was like right next to the refs. And I'm like, this is hilarious, but please don't get a penalty. Like the last thing this team needs right now is a penalty, but referees didn't give it to him. And there was no flag on the hit. I think Burrow flopped on the one with Dre'Mont Jones. I have to go back and watch the Tavius one again. That one I thought was more of a hit than the one Dre'Mont gave. I thought the Dre'Mont one shouldn't have been a flag. Tavius will have to go back and look at, but you know, even still, none of those were called for Joe Burrow. And he said that you have to have that fire in you to play defense, and it coincides with them giving up 0 points because this team, as I've said over and over again, if you've been listening to me for a while, if you're an everydayer, you know I say this a lot, but this team is so momentum based, and it felt like the Ravens, they got their mojo defensively early because again, this was pretty terrible football to watch early on. Like it was bad, but you know, Jamar Chase had drops, Joe Burrow had bad plays. Like they got that momentum going and you know, didn't allow the Bengals to get it. And it felt like it was kind of up for grabs. Like, oh, Joe Burrow takes a bad sack. Oh, Zay Flowers drops a pass and turns into an interception. Oh, Jamar drops a pass, turns into an. Just felt like that momentum was like bouncing back and forth off both teams. And you're like, all right, well, who's going to grab it? And it felt like the momentum really started to shift. I think the play was that Jamar Chase drop. It was that first drive on that Cincinnati drive where they were driving down the field after Baltimore couldn't get anything. And I think they were going to go down there and score 7. Jamar cooked Marlon Humphrey and was wide open. And then he drops that ball. Joe Burrow, I think there was a penalty or something, but then he takes a sack on 3rd down instead of throwing the ball away that takes them out of field goal range. And again, while the Ravens didn't do anything directly after that, I think that set it up. And sometimes it's a slow game with momentum and you get that intensity. You start digging under and getting under people's skin and getting them off their game. And it just felt like Cincinnati was never in it. And when you hold that Cincinnati offense to 0 points, that is impressive. And Joe Burrow and Dre'Mont Jones, they talked after the game and, you know, that they exchanged a hug, did everything. And Dre'Mont, he did not hold back. He was straight up blunt, honest with Joe to his face, said, whooped your butt today, the more explicit version, but we're a family friendly show here. He said, whooped your butt today. And, you know, he did a little smile. You know, I don't think he wasn't trying to like talk trash. And like going back, these two were college teammates at Ohio State. So they have a relationship. It's not like Dre'Mont and Joe don't know each other. And Dre'Mont just walked up to Joe and said, yeah, we whooped your butt today. Like that would have been crazy. But you can see the level of intensity that Dre'Mont Jones plays with. And my favorite part of Dre'Mont Jones' game to me is the fact that in the box score in this game, Dre'Mont Jones, just 2 tackles. You want to know the best part about that? He had 5 registered quarterback hits in this game. The next closest Raven was Tavius Robinson, who had 2. He was all over the field. And while that doesn't look, you look at this box score, 2 tackles for Dre'Mont Jones. Oh, okay. Why are you talking about him when he didn't have an impact? Oh, no. Dre'Mont Jones had one of the biggest impacts on that defense, and he did it without sacking the quarterback because he was all in Joe Burrow's lunch. He was all up in there. He was making him uncomfortable, and you could tell, and especially towards the end of the game, which we will get to again in the second part of the show. If you couldn't tell, you should stay tuned for the second part of the show. The Ravens, they did what the Bengals could not, is they, 1, captured the momentum, but 2, they just kind of dominated. And that was kind of the opposite of what we saw in Baltimore. But the difference is that the Ravens defense in that game was holding on for dear life. But I keep saying there are like 15 best parts of this. The another best part of this is that the defense did that while being on the field for 40 minutes. The Bengals held the ball for twice as long as the Ravens did. And the Ravens defense gave up just 4.2 yards per play on the day to, again, a very high-flying Bengals offense. I don't care if they didn't have T. Higgins, because guess what? Again, they put 32 up on Baltimore in Baltimore's house. Baltimore goes back to Cincinnati and says, hey, we're going to repay the favor. We're going to give you tickets to Cancun as an extra, hey, enjoy your offseason. And that is what happened in this one. And it felt like Ravens football. That's what it comes down to. It felt like Ravens football. But you know what? There is a difference between Ravens football when everything's going well and any other team that plays. And when you look at how this game ended for both these teams, there was a clear difference you could put on full display for what Baltimore and Cincinnati represent as organizations. And a couple of former Ravens players had something to say about that, specifically a former Ravens wide receiver. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming up on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Aura Frames. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. If you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap. It's a way to share memories, because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it. So when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure it out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. And you can gift this to anybody: grandparents, parents, newlyweds, anyone who loves photos. And there are endless uploads of pictures and 30-second videos through the Aura app. You can add a personalized message right inside the frame. The gift feels thoughtful the moment it's opened. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code LOCKEDON. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Moving along on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Victory Monday edition of the show. Ravens beat down the Bengals in Week 15, 24-0. Appreciate everybody for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We do have 5 days a week, plus more daily Ravens coverage. So the regular show is Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. We also have watch-alongs during games, instant reactions after games, and after pieces of big news. We have the Locked On Ravens Squad Show, myself, Sam Njoku, and former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail, as well as bonus episodes on the weekend when there are headlines. And also, the Everydayer Club is now officially active. It's another way to support the show. So if you want some extra add-on content that I just don't have time to do on the regular show anymore, if you want to support the show a little bit more, you can check out the link in the description down below. We did our first weekly Q&A last week, and you get access to an exclusive text chain with me where we can talk about the team, and a Discord server, and a whole bunch of other cool stuff. So again, nothing's changing with the show itself here. Still, everything's free and available. But if you just want some extra add-on content, that is what the Everydayer Club is. And it's really cool, really exciting. What's really cool and really exciting is the Ravens, the way that they won this game. And so Torrey Smith, I'll do some backstory here. Torrey Smith, former Ravens receiver, he responded to a story that Mike Florio put out right before the game. And this doesn't have anything to do with the play on the field, but apparently the Bengals didn't remove snow from the seats in an apparent violation of league policy, which honestly, I will be honest with you, I did not know was a thing. Apparently, the NFL's playing field specifications say each home club is responsible for having a snow removal plan in place, ensuring the stadium has adequate snow removal equipment available, this, that, and the other. And so apparently, where the seat aisles are prioritized and are in good shape, and are in good shape, seats are easily wiped off, and the ushers are equipped to help there. So that's what Mike Florio was talking about. Doesn't have anything to do with the actual game itself. But Torrey Smith then responded to that and said, worst organization in the NFL, which is a scalding thing to say. And there's been a lot put out there about the Bengals organization. And again, I'm not going to make the segment about the Bengals organization, but there's a fan that then responded and said, you played for the Ravens. His opinion ain't valid coming from you. And Torrey Smith responded and said, quote, I'd make the argument that I played for 3 top 5 organizations and one that will be there when they get a new facility. And so for those that don't know, Torrey, obviously, yes, he played in Baltimore and won a Super Bowl, but Torrey is a multi-time Super Bowl champion. He played obviously for San Francisco after Baltimore and then went to Philly for a year and then Carolina for a year as well. So, wherever he's, and he didn't specify the whole new facility thing, but, I do believe he'd put the Ravens in that category as one of those top 5 organizations. But the way that the Bengals executed the game at the end on Sunday was horrendous, in my opinion. Like, if I were a Bengals fan, I would be absolutely livid, disgusted, embarrassed. And it shows the difference, in my opinion, between Baltimore and Cincinnati from the top down. And every organization has their things and things that happen and, weird stories and whatnot. But, the Ravens, I know there's been a lot of weird stuff that's happened around them over the last handful of years, from Deontay Johnson, CJ Gardner-Johnson, even like Carl Lawson. That situation was weird. Marcus Williams, Eddie Jackson, like they've had their fair share of that. But they are widely regarded across the NFL as one of the top 5 organizations. And part of that is how they carry themselves both on and off the field. But I want to talk on the field, because when I mentioned that the Bengals held the ball for 40 minutes in this game, 40 minutes, it was technically 39-19, but I'm rounding up for the sake of rounding up to say that the Bengals held the ball for twice more than the Ravens did. But in that fourth quarter, with their season on the line, the Ravens broke the Bengals so badly that they rolled over and completely gave up, knowing they had everything to fight for and everything to lose. Bengals, they said, no, we're done. We're done with this season. Pack it up. The Bengals went on a 16-play, 80-yard drive. And, they're down by 3 scores. They're trying to come back in the game. But you could tell, the clock was ticking, and it felt like they didn't really have a sense of urgency where, yes, 3 scores, is that really tough to come back from? Yeah. Were they going to come back from it? Probably not. But whenever you have a chance, and especially when you have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, I think you need to play with a little bit more urgency. And yes, they did have no huddle at times. They did. But then it just felt like the urgency started to taper off a little bit. And then the pick 6 happened, and it turns into a 24-0 game. Technically, by the way, still a 3-possession game. You need 3 touchdowns and then 3 2-point conversions. But from that point, there were still 7 minutes and 32 seconds to go in the game, where you could go, you could get a crazy deep ball, and the Ravens were playing more prevent stuff, and they weren't going to allow those things to happen. But again, you need to try something, right? At least try to score a touchdown, avoid the embarrassment of a shutout. And the Ravens, again, broke the Bengals so badly that from the 7:32 mark to the end of the game, and the Ravens turned the Bengals over with about 2 minutes to go. But regardless, the Bengals just gave up. They started running with Chase Brown. They ran with Chase Brown, so they ran 4 straight times from the 7:32-minute mark in the fourth quarter. Then there was an incomplete pass to Jamar Chase, and then they ran the ball again. Then there was another pass to Jamar Chase. Then they ran the ball 2 more times, and there was another throw. And then on 4th down, they ran the ball again. So they essentially took 5 minutes off the clock to get to the other side of the field and not even get into the red zone. I mean, it was clear they were rolling over. They were done with their season. And that, to me, is the difference, because, yes, have the Ravens put in their backups at a point in a game where, they're losing, and they've done it this season, right? Where they say, all right, this game's over, on to the next one. Yeah, but that's different than this team completely just giving in and saying, you know what? We're about to be mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. And look, I think I give a lot of credit to Baltimore for beating the Bengals so badly that this happened, and that they felt so broken that they're like, okay, we don't care anymore. And they essentially said, we don't care anymore. But how can you do that with to your players? Yeah, the players are probably fed up with it, but these guys want to go out there, they want to compete. And I've been long on the fire Zach Taylor train for them for a while. I mean, I think he's a bad coach, if I'm being honest with you. And I think he should have been gone last year, if not 2 years ago. But like with some of the comments we've heard from Joe Burrow recently and Jamar Chase, like that's something that with the Ravens, yeah, there's frustration at points, right? We've seen that frustration come out, whether it's from John Harbaugh or Lamar Jackson or other players on the team. We know that frustration is there, but even if there's some discontent here or the messaging isn't getting through there, if the Ravens did that, you got to start over. Like you got to start over on the coaching staff first of all, because that's the type of messaging, right? That's like, okay, hey, we're just gonna run the ball down here. And I don't know if Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow talked about it, but I'm just so impressed that what this Ravens team did and looked like in this game on Sunday compared to what they looked like 2 weeks ago in Baltimore was so night and day. And part of that was, let's just say it like it is. Again, the Ravens wanted it more. The Ravens wanted this game more than Cincinnati in a do or die situation for both teams, but it was literally do or die for Cincinnati. And look what happened. Baltimore came out there. They took the Bengals lunch money. It dangled it in front of their faces and, just play with more intensity. That's the intensity that we saw. The Bengals didn't play with that intensity, right? Where Ronnie Stanley got choked out by Joseph Osai, he said. And, he said, no, I'm not going to take that. And started wrestling with them and fighting with them and said, hey, that's not what the game we're going to play here. And they dominated this team over and over and over again. So, Torrey Smith saying worst organization in the NFL here. Again, that's a scalding comment. But at the end of the day, if the Bengals are giving up like that in a do or die situation, there are so many more deep-rooted issues with that team they need to figure out. And it just goes to show the difference between how Baltimore played this game and how Cincinnati played this game and why one organization is very widely respected. And while the other one, generally, there are some issues that are widely reported on that people feel about the Bengals organization that a lot of other organizations don't really have that problem. And Shannon, Sharpe, and Chad Johnson on Nightcap, obviously they have their little Ravens and Bengals thing going. And, Chad actually, he brought Butta out, the streamer and content creator who's a Ravens fan, and Butta's hilarious. If you haven't checked him out, go check him out. He actually went on Nightcap for a little bit with Shannon and they chopped it up. But Chad and Shannon were talking and Shannon was clowning on Chad because he was like, oh, you're only right when Burrow came back and when the Bengals beat the Ravens the first time. But, Chad Johnson was talking about they need all these changes. But Shannon Sharpe was not letting Chad Johnson get, he was clowning on Chad and, it's all in good fun there, obviously. But again, right now, people are looking at this Bengals team and talking about trades for Joe Burrow and not due to contracts, due to team performance and hitting the complete reset button there because Joe seems so frustrated and, he clarified his comments and whatnot, but those rumors are swirling. And I'm just sitting back there and I'm like, man, did the Ravens just end the Joe Burrow era in Cincinnati? Now, obviously, I don't think that. I do not think the Bengals are going to trade Joe Burrow this offseason, but wouldn't that be a fun storyline? So I just think that I appreciate the way that Baltimore plays the game, even when they are losing, right? Because there's always what Cincinnati did in this game, which I think is the ultimate slap in the face to the fan base, to the players, to everybody who supports the team. And I'm just, for Baltimore, I get it. It's not a perfect organization. No organization is. I've talked plenty about how weird it's been this season for the Ravens, but at least they didn't do that. And why did the Bengals do that? Well, because the Ravens just absolutely dominated. Dominate is the word of the day here. They dominated the Bengals. Coming up in the final part of the show, we'll do a little Ravens and Bengals recap. Stay tuned. We got plenty coming your way here on Locked On Ravens. First of the show is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up, and you can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. So if you had the Ravens beating the Bengals in Week 15, you're living large over on FanDuel. Maybe you had Zay Flowers anytime touchdown. Well, that was a good one over on FanDuel. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, Visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Continuing on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you, breaking down the Ravens Week 15 victory over the Cincinnati Bengals. And I'm pumped that they did it in shutout fashion. The first time Joe Burrow has been shut out in his career, which is unbelievable. And again, like from where this team was 2 weeks ago to where they are now, I mean, it's crazy. It's unbelievable. So right now, you have an opportunity if you're Baltimore, right, to go on a little bit of a run. You still control your own destiny. You can run through all the playoff scenarios. If Baltimore beats Pittsburgh in week 18 and wins that game, having won all of their remaining games, and even if Pittsburgh wins all their remaining games, common opponents win out, like there is still a clear path. Now it's division or bust. They're not going to make it as a wild card team. Only one AFC North team is going to make it in the wild card race. Now we know two of those wild cards are not going to be Cincinnati and Kansas City after they were eliminated on Sunday. But even still, you have a really big opportunity. And how we were able to do that was beating the Bengals in this dominant, word of the day, dominant fashion. Lamar Jackson only had to throw the ball 12 times, though, and the Ravens, I thought, did what they were supposed to do, running the football. The Ravens didn't hold the ball for that long in this game. They were honestly pretty efficient with their offense overall, scoring 3 touchdowns and I guess 2 technically, because Kyle Van Noy got involved in that action. And I guess technically Alohi Gilman was the one that crossed the plane. Kyle Van Noy did Ed Reed proud with that little lateral handoff. But Lamar went 8-12, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And these are games, and it's been a while, right? It's been a while since we've talked about a Lamar Jackson game where he doesn't have to have that like gaudy stat line and the Ravens like blow out a team. And we saw a lot of that in, 2023 last year or 2019. I mean, he's done it over the course of his career, but only throwing the ball 12 times is one, I don't think going to be a like new norm for Lamar, but 2, when it's that cold and you have Derrick Henry, you want to run the ball and you want to do it with both Derrick and Keaton. I thought they used both effectively. Derrick averaged 9.1 yards per carry on 11 carries. Keaton 8.3 on 8 carries. So both guys were extremely effective. I thought the offensive line, this was one of their better performances. Now, wasn't perfect, obviously. You still had Tyler Linderbaum getting overpowered at times, Daniel Falele on the ground. They used extra protection here. They kept Likely and Kohler in the backfield, and both those guys did get overpowered at times. But I again, if you have Lamar Jackson and you send one less guy on a route, and you get him actually sitting back in that pocket, able to feel comfortable and deliver dots, fine. I don't care. Let him sit back there with as much protection as possible to get the ball to his guys. Now, Zay Flowers, 3 for 68 and a score. Rasheen Ali, where Lamar actually checked into a play. He saw Cincy bringing pressure, and it was kind of like the Jalen Warren play we saw go against Baltimore last week when the Ravens played the Steelers. He just dumped that ball out to Rasheen Ali, and Rasheen Ali did the rest because the Bengals pressure, they were all upfield. There was no one to account for Rasheen Ali. So that was a really cool play from Lamar Jackson there. But again, like Zay Flowers, 5 targets. Other than that, Mark Andrews had 3, Rasheen Ali had 2, and then DeAndre Hopkins and Keaton Mitchell each had 1. So not a big day through the air for these guys. Rashod Bateman also didn't play in this game with his ankle injury, but did not matter. The Ravens averaged 7.9 yards per carry, but if Tyler Huntley didn't kneel the ball 3 times on 3 carries, would have been about 8.5, 8.6, which was awesome. We talked a lot about Dre'Mont Jones in this one, but Tavius Robinson made an instant impact coming back defensively in this game. You could really tell that they missed him. He had a sack. Mike Green had a sack. And obviously Travis Jones, who just signed that extension, he got in on the action with a sack and a quarterback hit as well. So I thought everybody, and again, I thought the secondary and the pass rush worked really well in tandem today. It didn't feel like there were a lot of open players for Cincinnati. Obviously, Jamar Chase got his. He ended up finishing with 10 receptions for 132 yards, but a lot of that came in garbage time, in my opinion. Joe Burrow, 2 interceptions, and just really bad plays at the Ravens. Some of them were self-forced, but other ones, like the Ravens on that Kyle Van Noy pick 6, dropped both Kyle Van Noy and Travis Jones like a disguised coverage with a blitz there. I mean, it was unbelievable. And Zach Orr, I thought, was brilliant in this one. Trenton Simpson filled in for Teddy Buchanan snaps. Teddy is feared to have a serious injury, and I'm sure maybe by the time some of you guys are listening to this on Monday, it will be confirmed he tore his ACL. I'm hoping for the best, though, so I'm trying to put some good juju in the air, so hopefully it is not as bad as it looked for Teddy Buchanan. But, even guys like I saw David Ojabo flash on a play. Like Marlon was playing with a lot of physicality. Charlie Kohler was a special teams ace in this one. It just felt like the whole team knew what the goal was. The messaging was there. Like, I think that John Harbaugh had his guys ready to play. And I've been plenty critical about John Harbaugh this year and saying that his guys weren't ready to play and that falls on him. Well, look, here on Locked On Ravens, I want to be fair to everybody, right? And so when someone does something well, we're going to praise them. When someone does something bad, we're going to criticize them. And so I thought John Harbaugh did a good job of getting his guys ready to play in this one because that does fall on the head coach. And I thought John did a good job of that. We saw Darius Washington get involved a little bit with 2 tackles. So again, it was incredible. And some other good defensive stats here. One of them is that the Ravens held the Bengals just 3 of 15 on 3rd down. And the Bengals had to go for it 5 times on 4th down. They did convert on 3 of those, but 3 for 15 on 3rd down is where I'm hanging my hat if I'm this Ravens defense. Because look, to me, the Ravens have turned themselves. The defense is not perfect. And look, I'm definitely not saying it is. So don't quote me and say that, oh, the Ravens are so good now defensively, the best defense in the league. No, I'm not saying that, but they have improved. They definitely have. And right now, the Ravens going into week 15, they've turned themselves into a really good 3rd down and red zone defense. They're 11th and 3rd down defense, at least coming into this week. They were 11th and 3rd down defense and 9th in red zone defense. And we saw that the Bengals only got in the red zone 1 time, did not score. And it just feels like whenever, and actually I have to look at the record, but whenever the Ravens force a turnover, it feels like they're undefeated. Again, I don't have the stat in front of me right now, but it really does feel like they're undefeated when they force a turnover. So I'm going to have to see, but at the end of the day, like that's one of the big keys for the Ravens moving forward. Defense forces those turnovers, gets the offense the ball back. And then, I know that there was some criticism of Todd Monken for abandoning the run at times in this game. I really only saw one instance of that where there were 3 really positive runs and then 1 past to Zay Flowers. And then Lamar essentially ran into almost like 3 straight sacks. And part of that was on the O-line. Like Lamar did hold the ball too long on, I think, one of those plays. But if I'm remembering it correctly, I have to go back and look and watch the film. But, this was on the list of Todd Monken abandoning the run games. This was very far down the list. I mean, I thought the offense was fine. The Ravens won 24-0. They scored 2 touchdowns offensively. And while, that's not necessarily a lot, I thought that with the way that they didn't hold the ball for super long, okay, you take a 24-0 win and they can still improve on some of those things as well. And yeah, you win 24-0. Going to give you a lot of flowers because it was Baltimore's most impressive win of the season. And Lamar Jackson, Marlon Humphrey, a lot of Ravens players talked about how good the practice was over the course of the week. Lamar thought it was their best week of practice. And Marlon talked about Ed Reed being there and the impact that he had. And, just a lot of good things. This is the most excited I've been talking about this team in a really long time. And I'm hoping that we can continue to up that excitement bar over the course of the remainder of the season. And who knows, maybe the playoffs. Who knows, maybe the playoffs. But hey, what a win for this Baltimore team. We're going to continue to cover it all week here leading up to that Patriots now primetime game on Sunday night. Well, I have you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. On the web, be sure to like and subscribe button in video form and follow along and subscribe in audio form for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Coming up tomorrow, we'll be diving into more Ravens content and coverage here, so be sure to stay tuned for that. I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.